Can someone confirm whether they can see the screen?
Yes, we are
Yes,
able
we
to
are.
see.
Yeah, yeah. And this red color lines which I'm drawing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, fine. So yeah, so this is just an intro seminar. So I'll just take you through what our club does, and uh, like if you can stop me in between and ask me anything which you want to. Okay, so let's begin. Yeah, okay, so first of all, there might be some confusion regarding our club name. Okay, so in short, I would like to call ourselves Maths Club. So initially, we began as say a recreational maths club, but later we became a maths reading group. Okay, so this is basically under UG Council. Okay, so UG Council is basically made up of your department representatives and institute representatives, and they usually look after some undergraduate level stuff. So we are officially known as Maths Reading Group, but in Facebook and all, we are known as Recreational Maths Club. Okay, so this is just an overview. So I'll just take you through. So as I was telling, we are an official reading group under UG Council. So I am Arnab Maiti, and this club was basically started in 2018 by me and my friends Madhusudan Reddy and Kunal. So Madhusudan has graduated and now he's doing PhD in CMU. Okay, CMU is a very top institute for computer science, and Kunal is a final year in maths department. Okay, so we sort of like kind of try to promote some kind of research culture in mathematical sciences. Okay, so at least from your curriculum and all, you will be not exposed to that much mathematical rigor and or something I would call like mathematical research. So we try to expose you to that so that maybe later you can try to pick up maybe research as a career and try to explore something. And obviously we are not like total research and all. Obviously we'll be looking at some puzzles and all to have some fun also. And usually we try to conduct weekly discussions, and there is an FB page, okay, a FB group basically. uh, Maybe I guess I'll share the I think if you have joined through that Facebook groups, there I had shared the link once, but if not, I'll share the link at the end of the meeting of our FB group. So there also I keep on posting many stuff. So usually I post the weekly discussion links there, and over these teams also. So yeah. So this is like usually we usually use the same link every week. We don't schedule new meets. So yeah. So, like I think my aim with this like presentation is to just give an overview of what we actually do. So, like first, we can start with a puzzle. Like that's how we even started our club, by doing some puzzles and all. And later on, we'll slowly like change our theme to maybe a more research kind of stuff, so that you get an idea of what we do. And if you're interested, you can join our club. As such, unlike other clubs, we don't follow any kind of selections and all. Everyone is free to join the club. Okay, even if you haven't, like obviously every week you can, if you like, I'll share the link openly. So if you guys are interested, you can always join. If you want to take part in activities other than just like which goes on every week, for that you can register with our club and join our club. Okay, so this is so let's this is going to be a kind of interactive session. So we don't want to make it some kind of class and all. Anyway, you'll be doing classes right now. So ensure that let's have like this is a discussion session. I always call it a discussion session because I would like people to have discussion and try to kind of develop the intellectual skills which will be useful everywhere. Like I believe like having good intellectual skills will be helpful not only in research but also in jobs, like whatever thing you do, you need to have good intellectual skills. So yeah, so let's begin. So can someone try to, okay, so it's white's move, okay. Now, so within 2 white moves, you have to checkmate the black king. So can someone, can someone come up with a way to checkmate the black king within 2 moves? You can unmute and you can try to say.
Queen to f5, uh, then pawn moves one step ahead, and
Yeah,
then
yeah. So this first it will move here, then this will come here, then again it will go and attack it back, and it's checkmate. Yeah. So this is one cute puzzle, and you can even try this thing like you need to place 4 queens such that they don't attack each other. So you need to, yeah.
You can place them like knights, like they cannot touch each other. You can place the queens the same way. Like
Yeah, got it. What you're saying. Yeah.
you can,
So basically, you mean these are locations.
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, this is So this is what is shown here. Okay. Yeah. So that's quite good. But yeah, just this is again a very simple question. Can someone like just show this is a very simple proof? Like, can you place 5 queens and still avoid attacks?
No, we cannot, because each row will be covered by a queen and just 4 queens.
Yeah. So a 5th one will enter a row which has already a queen. Yeah. So that's the right answer. So these, okay, so you might be wondering like, okay, so why do we look at these kind of puzzles? So these kind of puzzles actually has huge applications in AI. Okay. So that's not the reason why I gave you this puzzle. It's just for fun. But usually AI, the people working in AI, they usually have a look at these kind of puzzles, and they do something called state space search. You can search in later in your free time. So these all are actually used in artificial intelligence because machines are not as intelligent as humans. Okay. So that's why you need to properly kind of train them or explain them what actually to do. So for a machine to solve this problem, it has to actually search the solution. It can't think logically. Like someone directly came up with the solution that place it in a knight fashion, like how the knights are placed, but machines may not be able to think in that fashion. So they have to kind of search the solution. So how do we search efficiently and all is usually dealt in AI. So this is one thing which we can do. Then there's something called paradoxes. Okay. So like there is a barber bee, okay, which shaves all the villagers who do not shave themselves. Okay. And the barber will not shave any villager who shave themselves. Okay. So this is the characteristic of the barber. Okay. So now the question is, will the barber shave itself? So like, so this is your barber. Then you have people. Okay. This guy doesn't shave itself. So the barber will shave this guy. And suppose there is a guy who shaves himself. Then the barber will not shave this guy. Then the question is, will the barber shave itself or not?
Yeah, this is a paradox.
Yeah. So so someone was saying no. So like what are you saying no for? Like feel free to tell anything. Like
If barber shaves barber,
yeah,
if barber shaves barber, it means barber shaves himself, but it is given that barber shaves none of the villagers who shave themselves.
Yeah.
So this case is rejected.
Yeah.
If barber does not shave himself, it means barber does not shave himself, but barber shaves all the villagers who did not shave themselves.
Yeah.
So contradiction. So
Yeah.
hence this case also rejected. Hence this is a paradox.
Yeah. Yeah. So this, so these are actually paradoxes actually. So paradoxes are actually what led to your set theory. Okay. So set theory. So this actually led to what we know right now as well-defined sets, and this actually was a very big basis of what led to set theory. So like what I want to show to you is that some very common puzzles or some very basic questions actually led to something which is now a very formal area in mathematics. Okay. Now what we can do, we can actually kind of make it like we can formulate that same thing as a form of mathematical representation. So we can replace barber by some set X. Okay, this is a set. Okay. So we want to create a set R such that it contains all set X such that X is not part of X. Okay. So this is the set which we want to create. Okay. Now the question would be whether R belongs to R or not. So you have a similar kind of paradox which you had for barber. Okay. Just replace barber by set. You'll have this kind of paradox. Okay. So what people do, there's some ZRC algorithm. So I forgot the exact full form, but this is Frankel basically. So there are some axioms based on which your modern set theory is created, and in that axioms, these type of formulations are kind of avoided. Okay. Now, now you might be wondering, okay, so this is one kind of set. Does there exist any set? Like, does there exist a set which contains itself? Okay. Okay. So this is a very interesting question. Okay. Can you find a set which contains itself? Okay. So this you can take it as a puzzle and try to solve it in a free time. Obviously, this is going to be an infinitely large set. It won't be a finite set. So try to think in your free time, this thing. Okay. So we'll now move on to some other topic. Okay. So, okay. So this is another part of, you can say, the modern, you can say all these are like kind of overlapping, like number theory, set theory and all. So say we know that we have natural numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to so on. And then we have integers. Okay, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And from here, -1, -2, -3, and so on. Okay. Now, I might ask this question. Are the number of natural numbers same as number of integers? Okay. So obviously I wrote here answer is yes. Okay, in natural numbers, let's think. Fine. Yeah, so I wrote it as yes, but yeah. So when we are dealing with infinite numbers, so first of all, can someone tell me what do you mean by equality actually? If we have infinite numbers basically, like how can we say that two infinite sets are equal? Can someone come up with a notion?
If
We
we are
should have a
able to,
bijection between the two.
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
if we are able to show 1-to-1 mapping.
Yeah. If we are able to show one-to-one mapping, we say that both the sets are equal. Okay. So we can always show one-to-one mapping between your natural numbers and your integers, basically. So can someone try to show a one-to-one mapping between natural numbers and integers? It's quite easy only, actually.
We could maybe map the odd numbers to the positive integers and even numbers to the negative integers with like
Yeah.
one offset so that we
Yeah.
cover zero.
Fine. Yeah. So basically, you can do this, then do this, then do this, and then do this, and keep on doing like this. So you have a one-to-one mapping, and in that way you have natural numbers equal to integers. Okay. Okay. So this is one thing. So this another question, I leave it for you. You have rational numbers. Okay. So in your free time, try to show that you can establish one-to-one mapping between natural numbers and integers. Okay. Or integers or natural numbers, both are same. Okay. Try to establish one-to-one mapping between these two guys. Okay. So this is, you can just try it in your free time. So these are some interesting questions to ponder about. We can show that between irrational numbers and say integers, you can't have one-to-one mapping. Okay. Maybe in some future we like lecture series or like discussion session, we will discuss this thing, why there is no such one-to-one mapping between irrational numbers and integers. But if you're interested, you can try to figure out. But I guess it will be kind of tough, but you can just try to figure out why irrational numbers don't have one-to-one mapping with integers. But don't try to look in the net, you'll obviously get the answer. Just try on your own. That's how you'll kind of develop your intellectual skills. Yeah. So till now we were doing something like what we were doing. We are trying to show something like given a statement, we can either show that the statement is false or we can show that the statement is correct. But the question is, okay, there is some statement. So can we is it possible that every well-formed mathematical statement can be proved to be either correct or incorrect? So up to some point of time, people used to believe that, okay, any mathematical statements can be like proved or disproved. But then this genius guy named Gödel came and he showed Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which says that there is some, say, mathematical statement, okay, which no one can show whether it's like true or like it's correct or incorrect. Okay. To be more precise, like suppose if the statement is true, then no one using the current set of mathematical tools they have, they cannot come up with a proof. Okay. This is what this guy showed. So in your free time, just you can try to have a look at Gödel's incompleteness theorem. You will find some awesome videos on this particular topic. Yeah. And you can read about this particular author also, like how he came up with this theorem and how much, first of all, in order to gain the attention of people towards this theorem, how much he had to fight and all. So this one fascinating thing about mathematics is that it is not possible to prove every single theorem out there.
Just like Euclid's postulate.
Huh?
Euclid's postulate aren't proved yet, right?
No. There is some statement which is true, but you cannot prove it using a current mathematical system. That's what this guy showed.
Euclid also.
Yeah.
Euclid's postulate are also same thing, right?
No.
Like a dot cannot be divided. We cannot prove it.
No, it's not like that actually. There are some. See, Euclid's postulate actually form a part of our mathematical system. Okay. Suppose you have those systems with you. Using those tools, there is some statement out there which is true, but you cannot go and prove it actually. If you remove, see, that state, you cannot, okay, the Euclid's postulate and all, that those are like you can say we consider it to be true and then we try to solve the problems, right? So some statement which is not yet considered to be true, if we try to prove or disprove it, it's kind of impossible. That's what this guy showed. Then you have to include that particular thing in your mathematical system and maybe create a new mathematical system. But when you create a new mathematical system, again, there will be some statement out there which cannot be proved. And if you keep on adding these new statements as your axiom, still you won't like finish it. Like there will be some mathematical statement which cannot be proved. So I just gave a higher level stuff. You can my my reasoning behind just mentioning this theorem is so that you can just have a look at this in your free time. There are a lot of very awesome videos on this Gödel's incompleteness theorem. You can just have a look at them, then you will get a fascinating view about that. I just told in a very high level way. You can just have a look at that. You'll find it quite interesting. I'm just trying to highlight some interesting parts and what we actually deal with. So I hope it's a bit clear. If not, yeah, again, as I told, you can just have a look. Yeah.
Yeah. Arnab, like I shared a video of like from.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, fine. Yeah.
It's a very good resource for like getting an idea about the theorem.
Yeah. Sure. So how many of you know about this puzzle? Koenig's thing, like say if you start at A, you have to cover all bridges once and return back to A. So you have to visit all, you have to cover all the, like you have to cover all the bridges exactly once and come back to A. So first of all, is it possible? So I hope, I hope I hope the question is clear. So if you start from A, you have these bridges here. These are your bridges. So there are 7 bridges in total. So can you like start walking like this? Okay. Maybe by covering each bridge only one and then say return back to A. So is it possible to have such a walk?
Arnab, just a small clarification. Like I guess the problem is for devising a path from like one piece of land, say A, to any other piece of land, like covering all the bridges, not necessarily back to A.
No, it's back to. I think it was back to like there are variants, but yeah.
Yeah, like it's kind of the different variants of that.
But I want back to in this case.
Okay.
Like you're starting from A
I
and
don't
you
think
want
it
to come
should be
back to
possible.
No, I like even back. Try to okay. Suppose I frame this puzzle. Okay, try to tell whether. Okay, no question is either right or wrong. But I frame this puzzle. Can you start from A, cover each bridge once, and then come back to A? Is it possible or not?
No, I don't think it
there
should
are
be
odd
possible.
number of bridges.
Yes, there are odd number of bridges.
Odd number of bridges.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the rough reason. So this guy is
how to justify.
Yeah, so odd number of okay, so it's not exactly odd. Okay, there is one thing of odd number of bridges, yeah. So how should I justify? Okay, just take suppose. Okay, what you can do, we can first do abstraction. Okay, just to make it more simple. So this A, you can make one circle here, which we call it as node. Okay, one node, and you this bridge, say this is A. Okay, so there are two bridges to B here. Okay, fine. Both are quite similar. B, C, and D. Okay. So these are A, B, C, D, and then you have bridges. So bridge, we replace it by edge. Okay. And we create this abstraction, which we call graphs. Now someone was asking, why is it not possible? Okay. First check the number of edges from this node A. Okay. So there are 5 edges. Okay. So say if I go out from this A to some other place, and if I return back, okay, and then if I go again and then return back and then go again, and if I return back, then always there has to be even number of edges. Okay, because otherwise what will happen is that I will just go out like from A. I'll go out, but I may not return. Okay. I may not return. That's the main issue. So if I am not able to return, then my initial problem won't get satisfied, right? Because I have to return also. So in order to return, there has to be, so first you are leaving. Okay. For leaving, you require one edge. For returning back, you need another edge. So if you consider a sequence of leaving, returning, you should have even number of edges. Okay. Connected to A. So
but
that's
what
why
if he's leaving only once and returning only once?
Still you have even only, no? So you see, after leaving, you can only return, right? And then after returning, you can only leave. So you will have only alternate sequence of leaving and returning. So if you start at the end, at the start I'll leave, at the end I'll return. In between you will have RL. But all this will be even, and even these are also even. So in total, it should be even only. Yeah. So it should be even at the end. And yeah, you got it right.
Yes.
So that's why your this number of edges connected to this node should be even, and this should be actually true for each and every node actually. So for each and every node, suppose we had even number of edges connected to them, then we can have one such path actually, like one such walking, which will cover all the edges and return to A. That's possible actually. I'm not going to prove it. Maybe in some future discussion sessions, we can have a discussion on that. But if you are interested to know more about this thing, you can just search Eulerian trail. In Wikipedia, you will find nice information on this Eulerian trail or Eulerian circuit. Okay. Circuit is closed. Someone was telling we can't return. No, that is called Eulerian trail. If you want closed, then Eulerian circuit. Okay. You just search this, you'll get. So what I wanted to tell you is that this problem was given to this particular guy, Euler. And then he came up with this abstraction, which we call it as graphs. Okay. So there are two kinds of graphs actually. This is one graph and another one is the graph which you study in 11th, 12th, x-axis, y-axis. Both are quite important. Right now by graphs, I mean this particular thing. Okay. So this is quite important, especially in computer science. Actually, it's very important in every discipline, but it's most important in computer science, graph theory. Without this, like, you literally can't imagine to be, say, a computer science guy or something like that. I'm just giving an example. Other departments also have uses of this, but graphs are basically quite useful for abstraction. So this guy basically started your graph theory, and that's using basically because of this puzzle, even this area of research also came, and it's a very active area of research actually nowadays. And these courses are usually offered in IIT Kharagpur, so you can learn about this particular topic very nicely in future. And we actually discuss a lot about graphs. There are lots of problems with respect to that. Like you can't even imagine. There's so many problems. Like one particular research area is completely dedicated to these graphs. Like it's quite fascinating. So this is one area. So this is, you can say, we are slightly transitioning from your puzzles to a more advanced mathematics and, like, you can say, research kind of stuff, which we actually kind of deal with, and which will be quite useful everywhere. Graphs are useful everywhere. Okay, so this is another graph problem and I would like you to solve it. So suppose you have 6 boys in a party. Okay, and any pair of boys are either mutually friends or enemies. Then you need to find a group of 3 boys who are pairwise friends or pairwise enemies. So can someone try to solve this problem? Like, it's quite easy, but I just wanted to sort of emphasize one particular concept. This is basically a problem in graph theory, basically. So can someone try to solve this and try to come up with an answer? Oh, sorry. Did someone solve this? Can someone hear me first of all?
Yes, we heard.
Yeah.
Yes, Arnab, you are.
So did someone come up with any solution or should I proceed? Maybe Okay, maybe then I'll proceed.
I tried to create a hexagon.
My screen is visible, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Visible.
Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah. Yeah, tell. Someone was saying something.
I created a hexagon,
Yeah.
vertices of hexagon representing boys.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that basically connection between boys as whether they're friends or enemies. Line segment joining them.
Yeah, yeah.
Red line segment, blue line segment. Red means friends, blue means enemies. Basically something like that.
Yeah, sure.
So having joined all the dots,
Yeah.
we have to prove that there is a triangle whose all sides are the same color.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, I'm stuck actually.
Okay, no problem. So we can have a look at this particular question. Okay, so solution looks something like this. Okay, so up to that point you were correct. So let us consider red to be say friends and blue to be enemies, and we want to find a triangle with same color, like all the three sides having same color. So from one particular node, okay. Say from one particular node, we'll have 5 edges, right? Okay. So by pigeonhole principle, there should be at least 3 edges of same color. Okay, that's quite logical. Like at least 3 edges should be there of same color. Now, say these are those 3 edges. So this one, 1, 2, and 3. So now we have to think about these edges. What will be the color of these edges? Okay. Now suppose if this is red, then we have a monochrome, a red triangle. Suppose we have this edge, then we have a red triangle. Suppose we have this edge, then we have a red triangle. But if we don't have such edges, then all the 3 edges should have been blue. And in that case also we have a triangle which have same color, like all the 3 sides having same color. So this is the solution. Okay. So yeah, so this is the solution basically. So now you might be wondering, okay, so for 6 people, you're guaranteed to have a triangle of same colors. Okay, same color sides. Okay, red, and red. So are we guaranteed the same if we have say 5 people? Okay, so the answer is no, and the configuration looks something like this. So this outside edges, you can consider it to be one color, say red, and inside edges, you can consider it to be blue. Okay, in that case, you'll not find any triangle which has all the 3 sides to be same color. So this number 6 is known as R33. So there is some notation. So this is basically a Ramsey number. So Ramsey numbers are quite important, and no one has actually been able to show like properly that properties of Ramsey numbers. So I am not going to define what Ramsey numbers is, but this particular thing means that the minimum number of people you need so that you have like either a triangle of say red color or a triangle of blue color. This is what do we mean by R33, and the value of that is 6. You can have similar stuff like R4, 5, something like I am not going to tell you the meaning, but these are all Ramsey numbers, and calculating the exact value is quite tough. And like these all are basically huge research problems, you can say. So you can search this thing. Okay, sorry, I'll write it here. Ramsey numbers. So these are also quite nice things actually. And there is a course in IIT called Advanced Graph Theory, where they deal with this stuff. I did a term project on Ramsey numbers, which was quite interesting. So these are all like these are quite interesting. Like if someone can do any kind of breakthrough in this, then they'll become kind of famous in the world. So these are those kind of problems. But I'm just trying to throw some stuff at you so that you get an idea like how simple puzzles are actually related to something quite big. Yeah. Okay. Now, what you were seeing till now was something very mathematical, like quite mathematics. Okay. But even we even look at theoretical computer science. Okay. So this is not your traditional stuff. Like this is not your coding. Okay. This is not coding. I want you to be clear. So by theoretical computer science, I mean there are some the basically this is also mathematical, but here you kind of develop algorithms. What is algorithm? It's like some step-by-step procedure to solve some problem. Okay. You need to give me a method to solve a problem. Okay. In mathematics, what you do, you try to show that, okay, this property exists, like we showed now, right? You have this triangle and all. But in theoretical computer science, what we do is that we try to give you a step-by-step procedure. And then we try to use mathematical tools to show that, yes, indeed, my algorithm is actually working correctly. Okay, so what type of algorithms am I talking about? So we can consider a shortest path problem. Like maybe, say this is your Google Maps. Suppose you stay here. Okay, you stay here and you want to reach here. Okay, so the question, so you have multiple paths. You can go from here, 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 and then reach here. Maybe you can go from here, then you can go here, here, and then reach here. So you have multiple ways to reach that same location. Now what obviously Google Map also does in a way is to give a shortest path from your location to that location using the possible roads you have. Okay. So for that, there is a very famous algorithm called Dijkstra's algorithm. Okay. Which usually is taught in algorithms course. Okay. But it's a very simple algorithm. But again, I won't explain it right now because this is just an introductory seminar. But this algorithm kind of gives you the shortest path between your location and the location you want to go to. So this is what our algorithms are, and you can use graph theory to prove that your algorithm works correctly. So this is what is actually dealt in theoretical computer science usually. So we even look at topics which come under the purview of theoretical computer science also. Now, even this is also quite interesting. So how many of you have seen this fast food chains to be side of each other, or maybe jewelry stores to be right like they're beside each other? Like you have on the road, you can see jewelry stores located beside each other. So can someone confirm whether you actually saw such scenario? Maybe all the branded shops are quite close to each other.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So did anyone try to wonder why it is the case? Like natural intuition might be that like these guys are located beside each other. So they might be losing, like they might be at loss because they're competing with each other. They might be better off being far from each other. So did anyone wonder why this is the natural scenario?
I mean, the closer they are to the customers, the more beneficiary it will be for them. So they try to be as close as possible to each other.
Not like you can. Okay, so how can I tell?
Maybe
Okay.
they are more concerned with destroying others' competition.
No, not that. They're not that bad actually. Yeah, they're not that bad also. But
have a choice of choosing another one if they don't like this one.
no, like
So easily they can.
no,
If there
say-
are many
some-
similar kind of shops at one place, let us
Yeah.
take the food example or the clothes example, then that particular place gets famous for food or clothing. So many people from all around comes to that particular place, then they can visit any store. So probability of getting in individual one is high.
Uh, like, okay, or some people like, or by parts you are telling correct answer, but okay, the thing which you are missing is all these guys are selfish. By selfish, I mean they want to increase their revenue. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, that's a key factor behind why these guys are actually quite close to each other. And I'll explain why using the help of this figure. Okay, now suppose you have two shops. Okay, so say you have, say consider a road. Okay, and maybe you'll have some people standing here. Consider the smileys to be people. Okay, and you have two shops at extremes. Okay, now see roughly this is like your 50% mark. So 50% of the guys will go here, 50% of the guys will go here. We are all fine with it. Okay, so what's the issue with this? Ideally, if you keep people in this, if you keep the shops in this fashion, there shouldn't be any issue. But the problem is the shopkeepers are selfish. Okay, so let me erase this a bit. Okay, the shopkeepers are a bit selfish. So what will happen? One of the shopkeepers will move closer to the central line. Now what will happen? Say this is your 10% and say this is your remaining 90%. Okay. So say people will go to that shop which is closer to them. So 45% will go here. 45% will go here. And this 10% will go here. So this guy, this shopkeeper, by moving to the right, it increased its profit in a way. Like now 55% of them are going here and only 45% are going here. So by moving to the right, it increased its profit. So when it was at the extreme, that this guy knew that if I move to the right, I can actually increase the number of people coming towards me. So that green guy can also think in this fashion. So it will also move closer. And they'll just keep on moving closer to each other until they hit the middle ground. After which they can't move any further, because if they move, they will actually start losing. Okay. So they come and meet in the middle ground. Okay. So they come and meet in the middle ground, and then they start sharing. So in this case, you like your optimal is actually like they are getting 50-50 now, which was the case initially, but they came in the middle. But initially, like it might happen that like you can keep in a configuration where they were earning more, but like maybe you have 3, 4, 5, 6 shops, but if you bring them close, they might start earning less. Okay, not in this particular shop scenario, but there are some scenarios where if they start acting greedily, they start actually losing, but they don't realize that they're losing. They try to increase their like immediate like reward, but in a long term they actually lose. Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to go through that scenario, but yeah, like okay, I can tell you the scenario. This is called Brace paradox. Okay, which I'm going to tell. So what happens is, say you have some roads. Okay. So you have these roads. Okay, going from, so you want to go from A to B. You have these roads. Okay. Now suppose if you add another road like this, actually it will increase the traffic. Okay. It will. So what will happen? Like say this is a shortcut. Okay. So that it will save time if someone goes in this fashion. Now what will happen? Initially 50-50 people were going here, so the traffic was less. Now everyone will think that if I go through this shortcut, I'll save my time. So everyone tries to go through this shortcut, and instead the time increases. Okay. So if people try to act selfishly, sometimes they are at loss actually. In case of shopkeepers, think they are at profit, but in case of say roads, which you might have also observed, that if people try to take shortcuts, they actually end up in a huge jam actually, because everyone is trying to take that shortcut, and That is one huge issue. That's why you might wonder why some roads are closed off. These shortcuts on main road, the traffic police, they keep some barricades to avoid traffic jams. The less number
Bro.
of roads, actually more it's actually quite better. Yeah, someone was going to tell something.
No.
Yeah, fine. So you might be wondering what's this? This is actually game theory, actually. Okay. So this is another area which we actually quite focus on, and this is my kind of the research area I work in IIT. Okay. So in game theory, we try to mathematically model some selfish guys. Okay. Because game theory is directly applied in economics, and every economic guy is kind of selfish. Okay. They try to increase their own profit. That's the default assumption. Okay. So we try to develop schemes such that there is some kind of stability and all. So here also you can see that after reaching the middle state, they won't move. So this is kind of known as Nash equilibrium. Okay. So Nash equilibrium is a very famous terminology. So where the selfish players don't feel the need to move any further. They feel that the current situation is better locally. Okay. So this Nash equilibrium is basically sort of found by John Nash, who was one of the greatest 20th century mathematician. Okay. You have a movie on this guy also, The Beautiful Mind. Yeah. So this is quite an interesting area, and we actually discussed this area a lot during our meetings. Very interesting area. Many interesting problems are there in this, and recently before you guys came, we did a game theory workshop also. The YouTube videos are available. If you're interested, you can see, but anyhow later on also we'll have a discussion with you guys. So this is just a brief introduction. So as I was saying, it's a Nash equilibrium. And there are some, okay, so that also, like nowadays game theory and theoretical computer science, they're overlapping and all. So those are all computational aspects. So there are some, so in computer science, there are some problems which you can solve quickly. So these are not the actual problems, but these are just to give an intuition. So you can solve multiplication quite quickly. Okay. But say Sudoku and all, it takes time to solve them. Okay. But verifying whether the Sudoku solution is correct or not, it's quite simple. Okay. You can verify quite quickly whether the Sudoku solution is correct. Like if someone fills these boxes, you can check very quickly whether those Sudoku boxes, whether they are filled correctly or not. Now, a very big question in computer science, which I'm framing quite vaguely, which is, if you read deeply, it's a very technical thing. But vaguely, there's a very open question in computer science, which is known as P versus NP. So what it means is that suppose you can check whether, say we can talk with respect to Sudoku only. Sudoku. So suppose I know that I can check Sudoku solution very quickly. Okay. Whether the solution is correct or not. Now the question is, can I actually solve it very quickly? I'm just kind of telling it quite vaguely. What do we actually mean by quickly and all? I'm not going to dig deep into that, but you can kind of try to think that, okay, so how much quickly we actually check whether the Sudoku solution is correct or not? Can we actually solve it that quickly? So that's the open question roughly in computer science. So it is P versus NP. So if someone solves this question in any fashion, like, no, we cannot solve it quickly, or yes, every problem which can be checked quickly can also be solved quickly, then basically you can get $1 million. Okay.
It's a millennium.
Yeah, it's a millennium problem.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can have a look at this also, but I don't mean to solve this problem, but have a look at the millennium problems, which are this. Only one problem is solved. Remaining ones are open. If you know about the Poincare conjecture, you know
Henry
that.
Perelman.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah, and he didn't even take the award and all. So yeah. So the another famous one is this one, Riemann hypothesis. if Riemann hypothesis is solved,
Yes.
it
We'll
if
know
it's-
about prime numbers.
Yeah, and then whole your security and all will break. So yeah, that's one thing. So this is Perelman. So yeah, so these guys are ultra genius. Okay, they don't do this stuff for money. Okay, so this stuff people even in our club and all, we don't do this because we want to earn some high packages or something. It's for the sake of enjoyment and like your intellectual enlightenment and brainy kind of stuff. So this is another kind of conjecture, which is Collat's conjecture. Yeah, so like if you so this is a function, okay? If you repeatedly apply this function on the resulting numbers, will you go to 1? So 7 you will become 22, 3n plus 1. 22 will become 11 because n by 2. And if you keep on doing this, you'll reach 1. So does it hold true for any number? That's the conjecture, basically. So yeah, this is another open nice problem. But see, okay, sometimes the open problem is tougher it is actually to solve. That's the more complicated the problem is, you can just try to make it simple and then try to solve it, and yeah, all those are possible. But these kind of simple problems are very tough to crack actually. And there is another conjecture, Goldbach's conjecture. Like every even number greater than 2 is sum of 2 primes. Okay, so even this is also quite tough to show. Like no one could show. That's why it's a conjecture. Okay, so as I was telling, we don't do this stuff so that we get some like core package and all. Okay, although you can get core package by doing math stuff, but that's something different. But in general, we don't do this stuff because we want to end up at some high-paying job or something like that. We actually do this because we kind of want to encourage undergraduate research. Okay, so if you don't know these three guys, okay, so this is a professor, okay, and these were the two students. Okay, Nitin Saxena and Neeraj Kayal. Oh yeah, these groups, yeah, these two were the professors. Okay, these two were the students. Okay, so they showed that you can check whether a number is prime or not quite quickly. Okay, and that was a very huge thing, very huge. Like they got huge awards for this actually, and they're Indian guys. These guys are from IIT Kanpur. Okay, these are IIT Kanpur prof, and these guys are IIT Kanpur. Obviously, it's quite old, 2000. They were 2000. Now they also became IIT Kanpur professors. But yeah, so what our group tries to do is that we try to kind of develop mathematical, like at least our primary aim is to make you strong mathematically, because there are a lot of like even in your companies also, a lot of companies nowadays prefer those guys who are mathematically strong. Okay, you have coding on one side, but on the other side you have mathematically strong. So either that, and if you want to encourage, you should at least try undergraduate research in your department, which is mathematically oriented, and try to get a flavor, okay, of what a research life, at least at undergrad level, can be, which can be quite fascinating actually. Yeah, and it will always keep you engaged, and you can like thinking about something new. Like instead of just doing mundane tasks, like your curriculum at IIT will be quite mundane, like yeah, regular stuff, attend class, do assignments, this, that, and all. But other than that, also you should try to like ponder about something new. So this is one thing which we do at the club, and another thing is that like through our connections and all, we can try to get you connected with some professors, which ideally will be a bit difficult for you guys to connect you to some professors and all in IIT, IISc and all. Yeah, so this is one thing. Yeah, that's what we were telling. And if you don't know, like undergrads do publish in publish research papers. Okay, even I have 4 research papers in my undergrad level, and I'll be applying for PhD. So yeah, so that's not at New Deal, so everyone who knows me knows that. But yeah, but you guys are more than capable actually of doing undergraduate research. But sadly, like there was no proper environment for doing that kind of research. Like it was like more or less like a solo effort from one guy. So what we try to do is like we try to bring you guys together so that you like kind of get some exposure. See, at the end, if you suppose you don't want to even end up in research, you'll at least learn some new mathematical things, which will be quite handy. Like learning mathematics will be never be harmful. Okay, you need it at every point of your life. Okay, be it in companies or in research or like again by okay. So some people have this false like they have this misconception that by research it means that they have to go and become professor in future. That's not the case. You can, this top corporates, they again pay a huge lump sum amount of money for those guys who do PhDs, because they need, see, at the end companies need brainy guys so that they don't make wrong decisions, because like wrong decisions can lead to huge losses. Okay, so they want guys who are actually good in decision making and obviously logical skills and all, which usually comes with actually doing research, in my opinion. Then curriculum is more or less like you strictly follow what's being said to you and you do it, you'll earn good grades. But grades are never a good measure of how good you are in terms of thinking. Okay, you can have high grades but you may not be a good thinker, but you might have like average grades but you might be a good thinker. Okay, grades and thinking are not properly correlated, at least in IIT Kharagpur. So that's why I would like you to like you can kind of try, like you can try out our club, okay, and see whether you're interested or not. So just give me 1 minute. I'll just share this link with you guys. If you're interested, you can fill this form. Then I'll contact you guys. There's no selection, nothing and all. It's just out of pure interest. You guys can join our club. Okay, in the chat I kept the link, and Pranav, can you just share the link of our Facebook group?
Yeah, I was just about to do that. Yeah. Just a second.
Yeah. So I'll stop the recording.
I had a question.